Typical family law disagreements people should not fight over at mediation. That is your topic for today. Welcome to the Lawyers and Mediators International Show and Podcast by InstantMediations.com, where we discuss law and conflict resolution topics to educate both professionals and everyday people. Catch regular episodes on YouTube, the Instant Mediations app, and anywhere you get your podcasts. Just remember, nothing in these episodes constitutes legal advice, so be sure to talk to a lawyer, as cases are fact-dependent. Hey everyone, this is attorney Mac Pierre Louis, lawyer, mediator, arbitrator, and I work throughout the states of Florida and Texas.
And Ty Bordoni, primary mediation trainer and director of mediation at the Mediation Center of Central Florida, and a full-time mediator.
Yes,
and it's good to be here with you, Mac.
Hey, good to talk to you, Ty. So today you see the topic on the screen. We're talking about typical family law disagreements that people probably should not spend their time fighting or worrying about, because these are issues that, come up every so often at mediation. And
every time. Every time.
Yeah,
almost.
well, so let's get into it. This is going to be kind of an interesting conversation. And hopefully anybody who's out there preparing to go to mediation or is wondering what it's going to be like, we want to give you some, warnings with regards to it when it comes to typical disagreements that come up all the time and why you shouldn't be fighting or worrying about it. But before I do that, I wanted to share your website real fast. And you should see on my screen the Mediation Center of Central Florida. That's Ty's brand. This is over in Orlando, and a place that is dear to my heart. And Ty, you're not just a mediator, but also a mediator trainer, because you've been doing this for,
13 years?
13 years, a long time. And so folks can go to your website and check out, what services you provide, not just mediation, family law mediation, but civil mediation, but also training for mediators as well. All right, just wanted to share that. So Ty,
and along the same lines, because I was the staff mediator at the courthouse, I would see the pro se, that is the parties who come in without attorneys. And because I did that for so long at the courthouse, I know how to deal with, unrepresented parties. So on my website, I'll get folks, it says, we mediate. You can mediate your issues, before mediation or after mediation. And a lot of times people don't have, the majority of folks go to court and they don't have attorneys, which is okay. But everybody should consider getting a consultation, if not hiring an attorney, just because that's what they do every day. And a lot of times you'll hear things like, well, but my sister's cousin, she went to mediation and that's not what happened to them. Every case is different, right? So everybody should always consider, getting a legal consultation or hiring an attorney. With that said, especially I would say in my experience, when unrepresented parties come in, there's a few places that they tend to argue about that they don't necessarily have to really argue about, but I think it's the way we were grown up, the way we see things on TV, the way, you hear about things. And so two easy ones that come to mind is when you get to parental responsibility, shared parental responsibility, like when great big decisions need to be made for the minor children. And I can't tell you how often people I'm going to do that. No, I'm going to do that. And then they have this argument. Another place is
so they see it as a zero sum, they're going to do it versus and the other person won't, but it's called shared responsibility.
For a reason, and so that place, and I would tell you, who's going to pay the health insurance? They have these notions that they have to fight tooth and nail, when in fact, typically, those things are shared one way or another. Now, don't get me wrong, right? Someone can get sole parental responsibility, that is, the big decisions, education, health, religion, like the big stuff, not the day-to-day stuff, the big stuff. people can get sole parental responsibility, but typically the other person like has to be, the court would have to find that there's a good reason why they should not have shared parental responsibility, you know? And so in essence, having done so many mediations like that, when I get there, and I you know, I have a checklist in my head, and shared parental responsibility is one of the first things when I'm talking about a parenting plan for, you know, parents that have one or more minor children. I start there, but I'll preface it. You know, rather than say, okay, so which of you is going to make the decisions for the child? I don't say that at all.
Yeah.
I'll say, you know, so you know what we have to talk about now is you know, something called shared parental responsibility. If you guys don't mind, let me tell you a little bit about
About
shared
it.
parental
Yeah.
responsibility, and then you can both let me know what your thoughts are. And so I kind of preface it that
You make
way,
it
and
deeper.
I put it at ease, you know, and then I'll give and I'll give an explanation, a general explanation, which, so mediators aren't supposed to give legal advice, but we can give general information that we're qualified to give. And so when you're talking about shared parental responsibility, you know, I just want to set them at ease, because one of them thinks I'm the one who should be making the decisions because that person does, you know, they don't know how to tie their shoe, or
Yeah.
they're
So
not
Ty,
responsible,
yeah,
right? Go ahead.
it comes from like a place of ignorance, partly where the person kind of assumes that they know this is a black and white issue, that
Yeah.
I have quote unquote custody and the other parent
Yeah.
doesn't.
Well
Whereas
said.
the law
Nice way to
doesn't
put it,
see it
right?
that way. In fact,
No.
in Texas, one thing that people do fight about a lot is that word custody.
Mm.
Um, in our law, we don't really use that word a lot. We use the
Yeah.
word
Neither do we.
conservatorship. The word conservatorship, right?
Ah.
And so we have joint, managing conservators,
Mm.
where both parents are presumed to be able to act in their kids' best interest. And you used the word soul earlier. That soul conservatorship is rare,
Mm.
and it's not presumed. It's
Mm.
given typically when we have cases like where there's violence,
Mm.
or where the other parent has never even seen the kid,
Or they
or
have capacity issues, or there's drug
exactly,
issues, or
exactly.
there's
And
like,
so,
yeah.
yeah, there's a natural presumption to have joint, but you don't know how many times people come to me for mediation and they start fighting over that one word. Well, I want
Mm.
custody,
Yeah.
or no, I want custody. And so this black and white way of seeing things
Mm.
can, if you don't educate them to begin, it can really create potential problems. And so I'm agreeing with you. I actually send my parties a document first before the mediation even begins that lists all the common rights and duties for joint conservatorship, so that they can kind of see, oh, okay,
Mhm.
that's what we're going to talk about.
Yeah. In
And it,
Florida, we're talking about so it's called there's no custody here either. It's
yeah,
shared parenting, and there's the
correct.
majority time sharing parent and the minority time sharing parent.
Yep.
But typically both
Yeah,
have the right to make decisions about their minor child, right?
correct. Yeah.
Typically, but
It's just
they will, you're right,
one's
they will
primary
argue
and
about it.
one's not primary.
And that would be the party who the minor child is living the majority of time with.
Exactly.
And but you're right, there's an assumption, well, but they live with me, I'm the one who
So
has to,
therefore, yeah.
you know, or I'm the one who's done it all the time. So, you know, so when they come in and they sit down, rather than let that argument start,
Mhm.
I mean, and it may
And you
still
know it.
happen anyway, but it's one of the places where if they will start to argue a lot of times. And so I'll simply say something like, so, you know, where shared parental responsibility is concerned, we're talking about major decisions. We're not talking about day to day. When your kid or child or children are with you know, with you during your time sharing, or you during your time sharing, day-to-day decisions, you make them. You don't have to call each other for what do I have to eat for dinner, or, you know, can we go to the movies? Not at all. The only time you have to tell the other parent what's going on is if there's an emergency, like if knock on compressed wood. I always say that, and I make a joke, everybody laughs. If if your child falls and you have to take them to the emergency room, as I'm driving there, I'm calling you, right?
Yeah.
But other than that, why would the parties need to talk and talk about decisions, the big stuff, education, right? Health issues, major health issues, as well as religious issues, big ticket items, right? So that when those come, the parties, the two of you, you simply talk to each other and you try and make that decision. And then you jointly typically make that decision. And then you let each other know what's going on, right? And then you have day-to-day decision making. And so you can make the decisions, and then you just let the other parent know, hey, we did this, we did the other thing. And as those day-to-day issues come up, you'll know what you have to talk to the other parent about. But right now, what we're talking about, we're only talking about the really, really big things, the things, and they don't come up all the time, right? But when they do come up, how are you guys going to decide? How are you going to share that with each other, or what do you where do you think? And then I'll turn it over. So again, I'll try and preface it. I'll try and bring them down. I'll try and calm them down and make it seem like this is the normal thing and it's not a big deal, even though it is a big deal, right? It's a big deal, but it's not a big deal because just like you said, unless there's a really good reason why, the court will give both parents shared parental responsibility.
Yep.
And then when they do say, well, but no, I'm the one who wants to do it, and I'll say, okay, no, I understand. Let me ask you. So, what are the reasons, that you say that? I mean, like, are there really bad issues? Are there drug issues? Are there? And so I'll bring out some big stuff and I'll say, is there something going on like that would make a court take away someone's parental rights?
Correct.
Or is that something that everybody has the parental right to make so you see how I said that? Without giving legal advice, I'm letting them know, and often enough, I would tell you, since I started doing that, for the most part, people will say, oh, okay, because I bring them down on that issue, but sometimes they will they will die on that hill. And it's just kind of crazy, because when you go to court, that's when it gets expensive. That's when it gets time consuming, and if you're going to go to court, you should get an attorney, because you got to know what to say, how to say it, what not to say, when to say it, when not to say it, and you're going to be nervous. And I also say that to kind of make them a little scared, like, FYI.
Well, some people will want to drive it to the court thing, though, because it doesn't really matter what you say. They're gonna want their day in court, and sometimes they're gonna take it there. So
yeah, they are. It is what it is. But
so Ty, what other common disagreements do you see? Because you brought up insurance earlier.
Health insurance.
Give me an example of how
health insurance.
And just a little preface. In Texas and Houston area, typically what we do is one parent is going to provide health insurance for the child, maybe through their job, or if they don't have it available, we might have the other parent do it, and then that non-custodial parent will pay them some kind of premium per month, or we could do it through another source. And if those options are not available, we might then do it through government assistance, Medicaid, or CHIPS, okay, which is very common these days. That's one discussion. The other discussion is what we call the unreimbursed medical expenses, like the 50-50 rule, where you have a cost that insurance doesn't cover. And so it needs to be covered to the doctor, right? And the parents are expected to share the cost. And sometimes people fight about that. But we typically do a 50-50 standard thing. You get the bill from the doctor, from the ER. Insurance doesn't cover it. You need to pay your half and send the other half within a month to the other party, so they can have their notice and pay their half. And people sometimes don't pay it, and we get into fights later in court over it.
But which is why you have that 30-30 rule.
Exactly. What disagreements do you see?
So, for the most part, it is when I bring up health insurance for the minor child, I'm like, so, next let's talk about, health insurance for the minor child. I'm assuming that, your child is insured by one of you, and they'll say yes by me or by her or him or what have you. But a lot of times they're like, well, you're going to do it. You do it, right? Because they don't want to have to pay. They want them to pay for it. And so again, before I just ask them, I'll say, and next, what I have to ask you about is health insurance for the minor child. And, and if I may, let me kind of lay a little groundwork here, because I can't tell you how often people will start fighting, saying, you pay it. And I like to tell folks, you don't ever have to worry about who should pay for the health insurance. And let me tell you why. Because the question should only be which of the parents has the most affordable, most comprehensive health insurance. They should pay for it. Why? Because we're going to run child support guidelines. And some of the costs that we have to put in there are health insurance for the minor child, along with daycare costs. There could be a couple of others, but we're going to put them in there. Why? So because when child support is ordered, it's going to have those costs in there already so that you guys don't have to worry about arguing with each other about, hey, you didn't send me the money, you didn't send me the money. We'll take care of that, right? There'll be an income withholding order. But the reason we put that in there is it's because whoever is paying the health insurance, right? Let's say, Dad, you're paying the health insurance. And let's also say that by chance, Dad, you happen to be the one who has a child support obligation. Well, if you're paying the health insurance, then your child support obligation is going to go down a little bit because you're paying the health insurance, right? If mom was paying the health insurance, Dad, your child support would go up a little bit because mom is paying the health insurance. And the fact of the matter is that everybody pays child support. Someone may be receiving it, but that's because you pay for the time you're not with the child, right? And so if one of you is paying a cost for the child, then your obligation is gonna go down on the other side. So you guys are still one way or another sharing this cost. So why not make sure that you're sharing the most affordable cost rather than thinking, oh, someone else is going to pay it. You're paying for it too, because you're not going to get as much money, FYI. And so when I kind of say that, it kind of puts them at ease because they've never seen it that way. They don't know. They just think you have to pay it.
Exactly.
And then it becomes a rational, discussion. Whereas if you don't do that, then the monkey brain in the back, where it's like, you pay it, no, you pay it, no, you pay it, takes over, and they're emotional rather than rational. Because when you get a consultation, or when someone can kind of give it to you in a way that makes sense, you can think rationally about it. And so those, at the very least, those are the two that come up all the time. Now, don't get me wrong. People will argue about alimony. People will argue about child support, but that's a different animal altogether. With these two, it's a lot simpler than folks make it out to be or think it is, especially the health insurance part. I can understand, like, someone, for instance, they're unmarried, and one of the parents, and let's be honest, it's typically the dad who hasn't spent a lot of time with the child. I can imagine and I can understand how someone is worried and they want to, I've been doing it for 5 years. You haven't been here. I'm going to continue doing it. Now, the other party can agree, but what if the other party is like, no, that's my child too. I want to. Unless you can show a good reason why that person shouldn't have it, or unless you can get them to agree, the court is going to. Now, I'm not going to tell them that, right? But still, with a lot of folks, it's how you present it. The health insurance one is a lot easier, and I can really get folks calm down. The other one, 60-70% of the time, I can get them calmed down. But if someone is hell-bent on, shared parental responsibility, I mean, I have seen people say, I'd rather have the judge, tell me. Okay, no problem. You could reserve and let the court make that determination for you. I just, I like to try and ease pain and disagreement off at the pass.
You've done this so long that you kind of already know. You can literally predict what people might say or do. Okay, and that's good insight, and that's why you are prepared by giving that information beforehand, so that more likely than not, that problem doesn't happen. So absolutely, I try to give as much information on my website as possible before the parties come, so that they can already have a little schooling, a little education, so to speak, without legal advice.
Do you have classes that people have to take, parenting classes in Texas?
So yes, there are available classes, and sometimes
Florida too. They have to take.
You have to take them, exactly. But honestly, most of the time in the counties that I typically practice in, the judges don't enforce them.
Oh, is that right? No, here you have to. You have to show the certificate in Florida.
Yeah. So certainly in a contested custody case, you have to. But in my experience, most people just don't bother. And people sometimes get offended by it, where they feel like, well, I don't need a parenting class. Well, no, it's co-parenting class.
That's right.
Because sometimes you don't know how to do this
co-parenting.
co-parenting, because
Agreed.
the other side might be a little more challenging to work with. All right. So our 20 minutes are up, Ty. So thank you so much for this chat.
That was fun. Always a
Yes.
pleasure, Max.
And then
Thank
we'll
you.
get back to some more. All right, guys. Until
I
next
look
time.
forward to
And
it.
this was a series, Mediating with or Without Attorneys, with Ty Bordoni, CFmediation.com. CFmediationcenter.com.
That's right. Thank you.
Signing out. Take care.
Take care, Max.